friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Still they placed a star where others just threw a stone.
We're joined today from the beautiful part of East Cork, which is new to this programme. And our friend today who's joining us, our guest, is Marielle Xuereb, is it?
Marielle Xuereb, thank you so much for having me, Mick.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an odd one, don't worry.
Yeah, no. As we said, Marielle, your name is Maltese, which is a very interesting culture, because in many respects it's very similar to, at least its history has been very similar to ours. It's but can you just explain to the listeners in very your own words, how did you come to be in East Cork, and how did you come to be members of such a fabulous community down there?
Absolutely. I moved to Ireland myself when I was 19. I was meant to be here for 4 months, and as it goes, I never left. So I finished my undergrad. I went into my master's in UCC, and I was just delighted when I saw basically that CD in the county, which is an LGBT development program, was recruiting, and that they were hoping to basically look at the entirety of County Cork and look at the rural isolation that currently exists there and do something about it.
Yep.
So that's it. I got the job. I started working with Cumann Na Daoine with the CD in the County project, and I'm getting the opportunity to do so much, hopefully, for the LGBTQ plus community in County Cork.
Yeah. What I was saying to you before we came on the air, I went to a conference about 10 years ago, and it was mainly a trans conference. And what I was, in many respects, a bit surprised but delighted to hear out of that conference is that your home country, Malta, it's very progressive in terms of LGBT rights, particularly trans rights, and I think you guys might have had marriage equality before we did as well. So.
To some degree, if I'm correct, legislatively, we, like in Malta, they really have their things in order, basically. Legislatively, it's all there. So it's definitely, especially with regards to policy and legislation, it's a good thing to look at. I do think it takes time to permeate down to the general population. I've spoken about this quite often, but it's a great start to have legal protection and to have legal recognition. So it's definitely something that hopefully Ireland can look at as well. But definitely it does take time to permeate down to the general culture.
Yeah, in many respects, when you and I would have been, particularly when I was growing up, Malta and Ireland were seen correctly as very conservative Catholic countries, and very conservative Catholic cultures as well. So when Malta, how did it get this progressive view? Was it from the grassroots, or was it a political initiative? What's your? You probably weren't there, but what's your recognition?
Unfortunately, I wasn't, but it was very interesting to watch. Because no, the Malta I left is not the Malta that is there today. I think it was a bit of both. The changes, there was definitely a political push to get that legislation in place. Being part of the EU and having a good standing in the EU is very important for a small place like Malta. So they definitely saw that as very important. And then on the other hand, the LGBTQ plus community in Malta, starting off in the university, starting off in kind of the more casual culture, I call it, they started banding together, and Malta Pride just happened recently. And there's a lot more acceptance going on right now than what I remember growing up. So we've definitely come a long way, and I do think it's two converging forces coming together in Malta. But I do think there was a political push, and I think the changes culture is happening from a grassroots place at the moment.
So would you say Malta is now much like Ireland, much more of a secular country than it perhaps would have been in the past? I mean, Ireland was very much a clerically dominated country, like most places where Catholicism was the major religion. Um,
I'm not. I mean, I definitely think Malta is still way more religious than Ireland is. We're very small. We're a tiny, tiny island. I think, for my friends this time, I think we can fit in Glenmire. We might have checked this. Don't fact check me on it, but it's very small. So it's a bit harder to break away from something as basically essential to Maltese culture as religion. There is a change happening. There is a bigger growing pocket of this kind of more multicultural space, but it's a bit hard because there isn't the space of land. Now, I know everyone likes to say that Ireland's a small island, but I can confirm I come from an even smaller island. It's that bit harder to break away from the Catholic presence.
No, well, in our house, the way I will put it is the way we look at different countries, and particularly Malta, is what act you have in the Eurovision. And generally speaking, for the last 10 years or so, we always see, oh, there's someone who probably wouldn't have upset the nuns. In other words, they have what we call head girl. Now, this year, if I recall, you had an African woman who was doing quite a disco beat, but generally they're like Ireland used to have about 20 years ago, ballad singers and upright characters.
Oh, stop! Eurovision in Malta, so important. So important. I used to go, I think, in Chambers in Cork to watch the live showing of the Eurovision. I was probably the one screaming the loudest just because of how invested I've been over the years.
Well, if it's any consolation, and it probably explains the participation, it's also huge in Australia, but again, mainly in the LGBT community. It's funny, isn't it, how how we all seem to be afflicted by the same disease.
That's it.
But tell me, West Cork itself. For some reason or other, and probably for a lot of good reasons itself, but it seemed to be ignored in the media by and large compared to, say, West Cork. I mean, West Cork has the kudos of being very sexy. It's got, we've got the artists, we've got the singers, we've got the movie makers. They've all got their own. People have honed in on that, and as I was saying to you, friends of mine moved down there. Everybody I know in West Cork, just about, they all seem to be ex-hippies. From your working with Seeding the County, how different do you see the two sides to Cork being?
I mean, Seeding the County works across the whole county, apart from the city, because the city is quite well tended to. So you're totally right. West Cork takes the top of the podium, East Cork coming first. No one ever talks about North Cork either, and it's quite there. That's it. So it's, I mean, obviously say it's some kind of the air that it grew, like the air of mystique in West Cork, and East Cork and North Cork are rather smaller. They're very close to other counties as well. Like they never got any of the attention, which is basically why it's so great to have something so kind of focused on battling this kind of rural isolation, based in maybe not the most obvious place. Because I see at least we're kind of in the middle now. But I mean, I wouldn't know exactly why. I mean, any rural place in Ireland is always going to suffer with regards to the city, with regards to its maybe more popular spots. So we're here to fix that discrepancy, hopefully.
Yeah. So what was the main, if you like, economy in East and North Cork? I'm thinking perhaps Youghal would have had a fishing industry, and North Cork would mainly be agricultural, probably dairy and like that. Is that reasonably accurate, Marielle?
I believe so. I mean, there's still a wonderful community of fishermen in Youghal to this day, and they often take part in Youghal Pride. Actually, they've
Very
often
good.
been a part. Yes, no, they're wonderful. But no, you're right. It is mostly agriculture, and then fishing, then across the coast because they've got all the lovely east coast over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But that whole stretch, and you could go from Wexford to Cork City itself. I mean, it's in terms of scenery, in terms of uh, just in terms of tourism, it has
Mhm.
enormous potential. But yet, you don't hear people talking about it as much.
I think people like to keep it a secret, which is
Uh,
so fair. Like I personally, I think East, now obviously West Cork is gorgeous. You can't,
mm,
there's no two words about it. With East Cork, I think it's one of the few places you look in one direction, you see the sea, you look in another direction, you see the mountains and these valleys, and it's so great. But it is small, and I think the people who live there really like living there, and they don't want
yeah,
other people to come in. No,
sure.
but it is definitely a very well kept secret.
Yeah. Now, I've got a friend who lives just across the border in Waterford,
Mhm.
and just across the border from you guys, there's a Gale Talk. Does that permeate back into West or to East Cork, or is it very much a local one in Waterford itself?
I'll be honest, I don't think I've come across someone who said they were from the Squiltacht area.
Yeah.
No, as such, I don't think it is. I haven't felt someone trying to get involved or kind of mentioning it that way, unfortunately.
Mhm. When I was talking to your colleague Haley, and she was originally involved in the seeding the county, some of the issues that was raised during her study was, if you like, infrastructure issues, particularly in terms of housing, in terms of transport, in terms of health services.
Yeah.
What's Since you're one of the workers on the ground, tell us what's the situation there for in East Cork.
That's it. So Haley's still on the project. I'm the main worker on it, but she's still inputs a lot.
Yeah,
Well, the problem is, well, the internet. That's not, it's not a secret. Everyone knows that, especially in rural areas, in East Cork and other rural areas, the internet is absolutely terrible, which especially over COVID, where we're all on lockdown and we weren't able to meet each other, it became apparent how important, how vital it is to have a good internet connection, because we had people lonely, wanting to reach out, wanting to come to one of our online social sessions, but what's the point if they come on, they can't hear us, they can't see us, they keep getting cut off. It just breeds frustration, which adds to the loneliness that already exists there. So, I mean, people go, oh, it's internet, but it's, at this point, we need to recognize that it's so vital to us as social beings.
yeah,
And infrastructure is in transport. Um, it's not great. It's
yeah,
hard to get to. Now, I
yeah.
know West Cork recently got a private service that we're doing frequent visits to and from places in West Cork for reasonable prices, and that's great that that's started up. We need something like that in East Cork as well, because it's quite pricey. I think
Yeah.
it's a tenner to go out to Youghal,
Okay.
which, it's part of Cork. You'd be hoping it'd be a bit
Yeah.
cheaper than that.
Yeah. Can I just go back to the internet, Marielle, and ask you, because you take it for granted where we are. We're lucky in that sense. We've got fast broadband. So what is the problem? Is it unreliability? Is it slow speeds? Is it an absence of broadband? Or
All of the above, all of
yeah,
the above. So some people will have an internet connection really unreliable, really slow. They don't have the faster internet option. It doesn't go out as far as they do. Now there is a rollout happening, and it is going through East Cork. I know it's actually happening over. It happened over the last few months, and it's still happening, and it's going around. So something is happening there. I can't tell you about the cost though.
yeah,
Obviously, I wouldn't be acquainted with that, but that is the problem. It's like people, they don't, at a point, they're so used to what their internet can or cannot offer them that they just decide not to be a part of things. That they just decide, well, there's no point joining in because I can't actually take part.
yeah. Well, that must have a huge. It must be a huge disincentive for people doing business because I've got, as I say, I've got a friend in Waterford, and her business. She's an artist. Her business is um, clearly painting, but also selling it online, and it
Hmm.
must be a massive disincentive. Any of those craft industries. Just the sort of thing you would expect to be able to sell to the world, not just Cork City or Waterford or Wexford or
Hmm.
even Dublin. So my understanding was that there was going to be a broadband rollout for the country. Now, I can understand a difficulty getting to Skibbereen or to Connemara, but you guys, you're not that far away and as crows fly. So what is this business that's dragging its heels, or is it government that's not incentivizing them to do something? Do you know?
I mean, it's happening, but it's happening very slowly. Like, but it's look, we can't say it's not happening though. It is happening. It's just happening slowly. And as we all know, I mean, Youghal used to be such a popular town. Everyone used to go on their staycations back in the
Yeah,
day in
yeah.
Youghal, and there was a major cutback. The train no longer goes out there. So like Youghal itself for a while was neglected. So when
Mhm.
it's only now that there's, I mean, Cumann has been there for 2 decades now, and the community scene in Youghal is so strong, and then slowly things are coming back, but it needs to be followed by the infrastructure,
Okay.
or else it's not sustainable.
Can I ask you then, is that um, compelling people to, particularly young people, are they leaving the area because of these lack of reasons to be able to stay there?
I mean, that phenomenon I think is just prevalent throughout all
Yeah,
of rural Ireland. I mean, and
yeah,
it's, I mean, I can see people why they go back because it's so beautiful, but I also understand why young people go to the city, go to the
yeah,
nearest city, go because
yeah.
the opportunities at the moment just aren't there.
Mhm.
Um, uh,
So,
but it's a pity because these small communities give us a different chance of life. To it's hard, not impossible, absolutely not impossible, but it's hard to keep that level of community that can exist in a medium-sized town like Youghal,
uh,
where you walk on the street and you know who you're looking at, you know who you're talking to, you know the butcher, you know the
yeah,
it's
uh,
a different kind of lovely living that we can't keep at because there's just not enough opportunities other than this lovely community opportunity.
sure. So, on that basis, is unemployment a problem down in your part of the world?
I'll be honest with you, I don't have the unemployment figures held in my head.
Uh,
Um, uh, I'm not too sure. I'm not too
okay.
sure. I can come back to you on that if you like.
Okay. Well, before we talk about your Pride by the Sea,
Mhm.
uh, people were asking me about how do you get there, and I had a look, and it seemed that there wasn't an easy way to get to Youghal from Dublin. So if somebody was say wanting to go there,
Mhm.
how would they have to go about that? Would they have to
So
travel to Cork first?
yes, there is
Yeah.
there is no direct route. So yes, you'd get the train or the bus to Cork. Thankfully, both are located fairly close to each other, and then you take a bus from Cork bus station. And I think there's two buses you can take, one slightly faster than the other.
Yeah.
So I think. Oh, I wouldn't tell you a number because I'll probably get it wrong. But there are two buses you can get from the bus station in Cork city centre, and that will take about an hour and a quarter to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not the simplest, it's not the easiest. But I remember myself, I used to live up in Limerick, and before I actually worked within Cumann I used to go and volunteer for a couple of hours every Sunday, and I used to come down from Limerick. So I used to get the bus from Limerick to Cork City, get the bus from Cork City out to Cumann spend a few hours and back again to Limerick. So it's doable. It's totally doable.
Uh, is it easier to do it that way than say Waterford to Youghal?
Ooh, I would
Is
never have gone that way. I'll be honest with you.
yeah,
But this is the same bus actually, because
yeah,
if I can remember correctly, it's the 40, and it goes from Cork to Waterford through via Youghal and Dungarvan. So I imagine you could get the same bus back.
okay. Let's let's move on a bit. You've mentioned Cumann Na Daoine,
Mhm.
which, roughly speaking, is I translate as the club of the people or the group of the people. What is the main role of Cumann Na Daoine, and what's its, shall we say, what's its history and why was it founded? Mhm.
Absolutely. So, Cumann is over 2 decades old. It's a community resource centre, and has operated as a centre of for the community in Youghal for the last 2 decades. It offers a variety of services. It houses groups like Bernardo's. So anything that might be of a positive influence and of a positive effect on the community, Cumann Na Daoine houses. So it's always an open place where people can come in and out. They have a cafe, they run courses. There's the East Cork Traveller Group based there. It's basically it's a hub. It's a hub of community welfare.
Yeah. Excuse me. Tell me about the LGBT community in East Cork. It, it's not so much the size is important, but is it a dynamic community? Is it a community that's proud of itself, that comes together, and is an energetic
Absolutely.
community? Mhm.
Absolutely. So we have the East Cork LGBT network, and that's actually even extends to people from Waterford. It's the East Cork Waterford group as well. We are very close. There's no reason. So obviously, events have been very slow, but we have a weekly tea time Zoom session with myself. So I'm on actually a Thursday, so it'll be tonight between 5 and 6 every single Thursday, where we just chat for an hour on Zoom about whatever. So this year we were able to have a walk on the beach on the old strand where Pride will be happening this year. So we had a lovely walk and we got Pride cupcakes because it was the end of Pride month. And the beautiful things to see is there's more and more young people kind of popping up and bringing their parents with them. And we also have an East Cork advocacy group that just started called Saoirse Chak. And we had a session in Youghal town. We just had a table out with a bit of nice music with resources, LGBT resources, and talking about the spat of homophobic attacks this year and homophobic incidents across Cork, Ireland, and the Broad. So we were just trying to raise some awareness. And the beauty of it was we had some parents come to us being like, oh, my child just came out. How can you help me support them? And it was so lovely to see that and be able then to give them the resources so they can get support, their child can get supports. So it's still a rural town. There is still that almost, I would call it a fear of the neighbour. What would the neighbour take? We better keep that quiet. But it is changing. Yeah. It is 100% changing. And it is, that these are the moments you kind of work towards, just chatting to that mom who is able then to support their kid. And we weren't hidden. We were in the middle, we were just by the clock tower. And it was great that they felt comfortable enough to come and talk to us and get the support.
Something I've been talking to groups in rural Ireland, particularly out in the west, in Sligo, in Castlebar, and places like that, and the initiatives that they've been both taking in the last probably 2 months is drop-in centres. Do you have such a thing in East Cork? Because when I spoke to the group for Wexford, that was something they didn't have. And Wexford is probably even bigger than you guys, but it seems that anywhere that has somewhere like that where people can just casually come in, say hello, even just be visible with in a non-threatening environment. What's the situation in East Cork and particularly in Youghal?
Absolutely. So in Cumann Na Daoine, we have the Cumann Na Daoine Cafe, and that is usually where we host such in-person events. And the tea time Zoom session I do every week used to be in person. Because of the pandemic, we moved it online, and that has been suiting us so far. But we look forward to being able to welcome people back in the centre itself in Yawn on Catherine Street, because it does. You're so right. It makes a difference when people can just drop in, when they can just, without, it's sometimes it's hard going onto a Zoom call. It's a lot of pressure. It's just your face and someone else's face, and you're there looking at each other. So no, I can't wait. probably after mid-October, we'll be able to take that next step again and reopen that space for our members to be able to just pop in and out.
Yeah, and something that's very important for the LGBT community is access to health services. Again, when I was saying to Hayley, speaking with Hayley a couple of months ago, she was saying that that's an area where rural Ireland, not just East Cork or West Cork, but rural Ireland really does need to make a huge investment, because the needs are the same, but
Yeah.
the delivery is quite deficient compared. Even if it just involves people travelling because they don't necessarily want to go and see their GP about certain things.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's very true. That's still very much the case. And like, it's obviously, it's not always seen as, I don't know, maybe from the higher ups, it's not seen as a big problem, but just realizing the situation, and that you, especially elder people who are unwell, you're trusting your life, and then most of the time they're being denied them being themselves. They're, if you're put into care, you're put into a care home, your LGBT plus identity is most often papered over. And what can you do? Because you're at their mercy, basically. So, but there are good things happening in that regard. It's slow. I'm not going to say, there's this massive turnaround, but good things are happening. Training is always being pushed forward for professionals. I myself did the LGBT Ireland training called LGBT Champions, which focuses on elder care.
You were talking with James.
I was talking with James, indeed.
Again, and it's an area that I've got a certain background in and a huge interest in, and that is trans in rural Ireland. How difficult is it? Is there? I suspect you guys would be the first stop for anybody who considered they were trans, rather than their GP or anything like that. What sort of support would there be for somebody who perhaps thought they were trans and just even wanted some feedback?
Absolutely. So obviously there's myself. I'll give my email at the end of this. So if anyone has any issues, what I do is I give general advice myself, but what I do is I link people up with the appropriate supports. And that's what I can do for anyone who needs it. So my own email is marielle@gmail.com. But within the city, we do have a trans group called Gender Rebels, and they have a lot of online events. So at the moment, even though they're city-based, most of their events, I'd say nearly all their events, are online. So they do social groups, they do gaming sessions, they do peer support. So within Cork, we do have something. And then, of course, there's TENI, which is a countrywide organization. But definitely, if you just want to talk to someone, and what I've been working on this year is working with the service providers across family resource centres, community resource centres, and kind of giving them a guide on how to also be able to answer these requests. Because that's the thing. Another aspect of seeding the county is training and guiding service providers across the county, so that you can go to your local community health worker, you can go to your community development officer, and they will know what you're talking about, and they will be able to refer you to the right places.
Well, I should, although it's slightly across the border, in Waterford, you have one of the foremost authorities on trans, and that's Dr. Vanessa Lacey, who is a absolutely fabulous person. I can recommend that. But let's move on, Marielle. Youghal Pride by the Sea. It's going to be taking place on the 17th of October, which is a Sunday. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So this year, we're so delighted to be able to have an event on the grounds again. We're going to have our first ever Pride Parade in Youghal. So while Youghal Pride by the Sea has been going since 2018, and we've had some wonderful celebrations, this is the first time we're actually going to be marching through the streets of Youghal. So we're going to be starting from the town hall, and then we'll be moving off and moving towards Green Park, where we'll be having a jazz picnic in the park, and we'll be having a wonderful Deja brass band playing for us, and we'll also be having a number of information stands, activity stands for kids and teens. It's going to be a wonderful little affair, and it's nothing too massive, but it's going to be absolutely wonderful.
I have to add a word of caution, because a couple of weeks ago I did something similar with the people of Wexford, the community of Wexford. I think they were having their first Pride event again, and that was terrific. It was in the park. And about 3 or 4 days before it was due to happen, I was contacted and they said, "Oh, can you put out a notice, because we've had this serious weather warning and we're going to have to postpone it for the week." Do you guys have any contingency plans for that, Marielle?
We do have a few plan Bs, thankfully. No, Youghal has a few options in that case. Now, we're really hoping, because that's it. I mean, we're not having the Pride on the beach this year.
Yeah.
But Youghal is surrounded by sea anyway, so the park is very close to the sea, so we won't be directly on the beach. It is October, we're being reasonable. But we do have a contingency plan. We'll roll out plan B if needs be, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a beautiful October day. I know we can do it. I know we can get them.
They were very worried because there were lightning storms and not hurricanes but tornadoes and serious, and as it transpired, it was an unbelievably bad weekend everywhere that weekend. So an important aspect, Marielle, people have once I put up your poster, which is a fabulous poster, some people contacted me on social media and said, "Oh, we'd really like to go." We've discussed the transport issue, but other people were saying, "Where can I get to stay there?" So what's the situation in terms of accommodation? Because I gather it's quite difficult to get accommodation while everybody is staycationing.
Well, actually, thankfully, Youghal has a number, and I do mean a number of great hotels on the main street. So I wouldn't worry about which one. They're all really well located. They'll be close to it. And look, I mean, I'm sure there are rental accommodations there, but if you're worried about location, Youghal is a really long road. So you're always going to be on the main road, and you're never going to be more than 20 minutes away from where you need to be. So any of the hotels there, I mean, I'm sure, as I said, there might be apartments for rent or anything like that, but I wouldn't worry too much about that aspect. Thankfully, Youghal used to be the biggest holiday town, so they're well equipped.
Yeah, you're having the event on a Sunday. Is Saturday night a bit of a happening place in Youghal as well? For those who like to get down on a Saturday,
I don't know, Mick. I think we've all forgotten how to party after 2 years. I don't. I have to say, I haven't been partying on a Saturday night in Youghal myself, but I'm sure that they have a good atmosphere going in the pubs and bars they have over there. We have nothing official planned, but I'll tell you about any secret plans after this.
I think probably the situation. I went to a party about 2 weeks ago, and I realised, I was a bit off the pace, and I felt it the next day. But look,
it's been a while for all of us.
But none of us are getting any. Well, it's okay for people your age, but for people my age, what can I say? But look, Marielle. I'm hoping, I won't promise, but I would like to be able to get down there on the 17th. Tell us about starting times. When does it start? It starts at 1:30 or what? No, it assembles at 1:30 at the town hall, and it marches off at 2. Is that correct?
That's it. And so basically, I mean, I wouldn't leave it until the last second. We're hoping to have a number of groups, LGBT groups and organizations joining us marching on the day. We would like to invite the public to join us, either, to watch us from the side or join us in the marching. We'll have a large flag to kind of create some presence with ourselves. And yes, there's loads of those. And then the jazz picnic in the park will be starting from 2:30. And we'll just have a lovely few hours of the afternoon together, kind of hopefully enjoying the good weather. Will be cozy, but it'll be nice.
Look, what I've seen, I've been trying to make this program more aware of rural Ireland, and for what there's a great dynamic out there. There's a great soul out there. So we're encouraging everybody to get down there and meet the community and have a great time and show solidarity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, if you've only ever experienced what I like to call big prides, Dublin Pride, Cork Pride, this is a very different experience, and it's lovely. It's so amazing in its own way. I prefer community prides to anything else, but it's definitely something worth exploring and discovering, because the feeling you get, the sense of community, you really you feel like you know everyone there, that this is a big friend group coming together to celebrate something that's close to heart.
Yeah.
So I really would encourage everyone who can to join us this year.
Well,
It's beautiful.
I was talking to people last week because they had Omar Pride, and again, that's a small event. It's one of, I think they've only had two in total, and yet the people came out, which was brilliant. But just on that note, size is all relative, because I used to go to the Sydney Mardi Gras, which was an enormous event, and then I came back to Dublin. And Dublin Pride was much smaller, but I loved it because it was village atmosphere. You knew people. It was, it wasn't the size that it is now. So I can relate exactly to what you're talking to. Just finally, Marielle, and this is always, we all love dressing up. So if people are coming along, should they wear their, get out their colourful garb, if they're,
absolutely. Absolutely. Please do whatever you have, anything glittery, anything rainbow, anything that makes you happy to be in your skin. Please come out and be as colourful, as loud, as proud as you'd like. Can't wait to have you with us.
It's a celebration of our culture. So, Marielle, it's been a delight talking to you. Say hello to all our friends at Cumann Na Daoine, and with a bit of luck, we might see you in a week or two's time.
Absolutely. Just before I go, I'd just like to give a big thank you to everyone who's helped make this Pride possible. So I'd like to thank firstly Cumann Na Daoine for helping us run this, and the support given by seeding the county project, and would mostly like to thank Cork County Council, the HSC and Dublin Pride for help for the funding this year. Big thanks to them.
Look, we're hoping we've all got through COVID. We're back in we'll be hitting our straps again, and we'll all be dancing together soon. So, Marielle, it's been a delight talking to you today.
Same here. Thank you so much, Mick.
Yeah, take care.
Friends with Dorothy come out off the sidewalk and onto the street, to the sound of those legendary feet. When there's no place like home, anti-hell, anti-establishment, with the chaff and the short straw, they'll have us stuck for sure. Anti-hell, I'm anti-establishment.